Hello, welcome to day 3 of vlognukah, where I'm making 8 videos for the 8 days of Hanukkah. And today is gonna be a good old juicy Q&A. I've always got to throw in a Q&A at the end of the year. So grab your cuppa or your beverage of choice. We've got a lot of things to get through, from hobbies for the Wicked premiere, trying to conceive, still, parenting, work stuff, home and moving, and 2026 plans. We got a real mix. Starting strong, there are a lot of questions about Wicked. In case you missed it, over on my Instagram, I hustled my way in to the Wicked for Good premiere. And one of the questions was, how did you get tickets to the premiere? The short answer is Greg's. The long answer is on my Patreon. It's free. Anyone can listen to it. It's me and my friend Lena having a little chat, doing a little story time about how we both got our invites to the premiere. Best part of attending the Wicked for Good premiere. Honestly, being around other Wicked enthusiasts, getting dressed up. I love an excuse to get dressed up, and I wore my wedding dress for the first time since I got married. The yellow brick road carpet itself was absolute carnage. It was so busy. You had to really work hard to get content on the carpet because they were just moving you along, like keep moving, don't stop there. It was a lot, but the buzz was amazing. And then obviously seeing the film in that huge cinema was really cool. The screening that I was in, John Shue, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo came out to be like, hello, thank you for coming, enjoy the film, which is always like a moment, but it was great. The film itself was good. It wasn't excellent in the same way that the first one was. As someone who loves the stage show, I am fully aware that the second act is much weaker than the first act. So the bones, the skeleton of what they were adapting for the second film just isn't as good, isn't as sparkly, isn't as special as film or act number 1. I think they did a good job of smoothing over some of the creases, but the fact that the bones of it were weaker just still showed for me. But it still had some incredible moments in it. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking about Wicked now and move on to hobbies. Love to hear some of the favorites of the year. Books, TV, films, theatre. Okay, I'm gonna do a whole separate vlognukah video that's gonna be my favorite books of 2025, which I haven't written yet. I haven't gone through all of the books that I read this year to curate that list yet. But off the top of my head, I would say So Thrilled for You by Holly Bourne. I read that right at the beginning of the year, but had such a visceral reaction to it that I ended up buying 8 copies and sending them to friends with personal notes written inside each one. That's how much I loved that book. TV, Dan and I finally took the plunge and got Apple TV and we watched Severance, which was incredible. Loved. And very excited for next year, maybe. I don't know when they're releasing it, in 2 years' time. Whenever season 3 comes out and I can actually be involved in watching it week to week and fan theories and talking about it week on week. Films, I'll be honest with you, I don't really get a chance to go to the cinema that much. But I do watch some films at home and now I can't remember what I've seen. What have I watched that's been new to me this year? I don't know. I did a rewatch of When Harry Met Sally. That's my favorite film. And then theatre, musical wise, at the beginning of the year for my birthday, I saw Operation Mincemeat and that was phenomenal. And I'm going to see it again for my birthday, but in Manchester next year. And then play wise, I saw Inter Alia at the National Theatre with Rosamund Pike. And if you get a chance to see the NT Live recording of it in cinemas, or if it comes on NT at home, then oh my God, watch it. Absolutely incredible play. Will you share your Storygraph stats, or will that be its own video? I think it's got to be its own video. Storygraph, for the uninitiated, is a version of Goodreads that isn't owned by Amazon and is actually much better. Top 3 sci-fi and also fantasy books of all time or in recent memory. Separate list for each genre. Okay, really putting me on the spot here. Okay, so sci-fi would have to be Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Goldilocks by Laura Lamb and Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think Atmosphere has made it onto the list because of the recency bias, but it definitely is a great sci-fi book. And then fantasy, I'd have to go with The Fifth Season, which is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. Then The Last Graduate, which is the second book in the Scholomance series. And then Hero of Ages, which is the third and final book in the first Mistborn trilogy arc. So we do have a 1, 2, 3 there, but just like different books from different series. How do you make time for reading as a busy adult? Audiobooks, just audiobooks basically. Also, I do still read some physical books. And here's my trick with the physical books. The physical books I read are mostly for book clubs, either the one that I go to at my local bookshop or my Patreon book club that we do, or it's a physical book that I got from the library. And so I have deadlines for those books, and that definitely helps me prioritize reading more. For books that I don't have deadlines on and are much longer than audio. If you had unlimited money/time, what would be a hobby you'd love to do? Making clothes. I'm very inspired by my friend Lena. I even have a hole in the sock that I'm wearing now, and I'm like, I need to learn how to darn. I need to darn this hole in my sock. One day I would love to learn how to make my own clothes. I just think the stage of life that I'm in right now and the space in the flat, I'm like, it's just not a priority for me right now. I can't. My brain. And the other one is working with resin. This may seem really random, but basically I haven't stopped thinking about resin since I made those resin coasters with the dried flowers from my wedding years ago, 5 years ago. There was a whole video I did doing different crafts with the dried flowers from our wedding, and the resin coasters were so satisfying to make, but mostly because I saw my improvement. Like the first ones that I made were shite. And then I learned a bit more about how to work with resin. And by the time I was doing the last ones, they still weren't perfect. They were still pretty crap, but the improvement was huge. And I was genuinely really proud of them. And I loved that feeling. And I really enjoyed working with resin, but it's super toxic. And I have a toddler, and I was definitely not being very safe with it when I was working with it the first time around. So if I had more money, space, time, resin, it was so fun. Well, I'm trying to think of what's a really expensive hobby to have. Horse riding. I don't give a fuck. Horses scare me. Okay, the next category is TTC, which stands for trying to conceive. Obviously, this is something that I'm happy to share about, and so I got quite a few questions about this. Is IVF the most likely next step for you? Yes, question mark. I feel like in terms of fertility interventions, yes. Dan and I said we would give ourselves to the end of the year and then think about doing IVF again, but we'll see. But it feels like that may be the next step. With your first pregnancy, how did you make the decision to start trying to conceive? I had an appointment with either my gastroenterologist or my colorectal surgeon. So I have an ileostomy, I have a stoma, and it was at that appointment where they said to me, you are going to have another surgery at some point in the future to remove your rectum, and that surgery will massively decrease your fertility. So if you want to have a family, do that first, and then we can talk about the surgery. And I remember standing outside the hospital and calling Dan, and this was, I want to say 2019 maybe, and we've been together 2-3 years at this point, and I told him what the doctor had said, and on the phone we're like, so we're gonna do it? We're gonna start trying for a baby? But he wanted to get married first. God, so traditional. That was the decision. We were just like, all right, let's get cracking. Did you always know you wanted to be a mum? Yeah, I did. This question came from someone who was still I don't know, undecided. And I'm sorry I can't be any help in this situation, because I've always known. I don't think it even ever occurred to me that there would be people who are on the fence. I just kind of assumed that everyone either knew or didn't know that they wanted to be a parent. It is a big decision to make. I would just talk to other parent friends that you have who can be honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and talk to yourself, talk to your partner about what your priorities are. Yeah, I always knew. I always knew. How have you felt during your second TTC journey sending all the baby dust? Thanks. I don't even know. I can't tell if the second year of trying was easier than the first year of trying. For context, it took us a year to conceive Rowan, and now we're 2 years into trying to conceive for baby number 2. And I feel like life has gotten a lot easier since Rowan's gotten older. So that has definitely helped with having just like more positive feelings about present day life. But also there is just the feeling of the longer it takes, the more depressed you feel. It's like there's just this underlying foundation that there is something missing in my life. And then I'm just having to live my life day to day on top of that. Like I'm having to be a functional person in the world who has a job, has to earn money, who is a parent and has to look after a child, who is wife, a friend, a daughter, a citizen of this country and a citizen of the world. Like I'm having to do all of that, which is fun, great, lovely, hard, challenging. That is life. That is all of the things. So on some days I'm really happy and grateful, and other days I'm struggling. But underneath all of that, underneath all of the normal ups and downs is just this like, you know, you get me? I'm fine, I'm not fine. That's the thing, that's the epitome of it. It's like, I'm fine, I'm not fine. That summarizes it, I think. Okay, we have some questions about parenting and Rowan. Highlight parenting moment of the year. This is so hard, and I wish that I actually like kept track of things better. But a recent thing that happened that was just like, was Rowan swam for the first time by himself. I don't know, something clicked in that boy at one of our swimming lessons, and I didn't think he was anywhere near doing this, and he also has refused to wear goggles for the last 2 years. But the other week, he was like, goggles on, head in water, swimming, paddling, kicking, with no floats and no grown-up holding him up. And I was like, what's just happened? So that was cool. Just like witnessing that was like, my goodness. And just him starting nursery and seeing how well he's adapted to that, and all of the new things that he's doing and learning and telling us about, and all of the new friends that he's making. That whole thing just feels really good. Me and Dan are both like, yeah, we made the right decision of putting him in that nursery. What one thing has been indispensable as a parent? Other parents. It's as simple as that. Best and worst bit of parenting. Okay, so the best bit is the child. Watching a human grow up is fascinating. Just watching them learn about the world, develop a personality, learn new skills, and also like me learning about what they think about things. The worst bit of parenting is the severe lack of lie-ins, and when you're ill or when they're ill, that is the worst. That is so hard. And then also the impact that it's had on my career and income, and the lack of flexibility and independence. Although the latter can definitely be improved as your kid gets older, but also if you have a good, solid co-parent, which I do. So the flexibility and my independence, I definitely feel like is in a good place right now. But obviously it's still less than if I didn't have kids. Have you played many board games with Rowan? If so, which ones? Okay, so we've introduced him to Snakes and Ladders and Ludo, which when I was a kid, we had like a weird physical board that was essentially the game Ludo, and a dice in a plastic dome, and we called it Frustration. Did anyone have that? Does anyone like have those memories of like hitting the plastic dome and the dice would move inside the dome? Is that just so you don't lose the dice? Anyway, we've introduced him to those games and he really likes it, especially Ludo. Ludo's been a big hit. Snakes and Ladders is a bit more tricky because it's kind of a game of chance of whether you get the big ladder or you get the big snake. And so there's a lot of like emotional management when playing Snakes and Ladders. But with Ludo, it feels like there's a little bit more in your control. And it's also really cool watching him learn how to like count the dots on the dice and getting better at recognizing how many dots there are. If anyone has any other good board game recommendations for 3.5-year-olds, let me know. How do you react if people she, her, Rowan? How do you discuss it with him? Okay, so it doesn't actually happen as often now. It happened a lot more when he was a baby. And obviously I wouldn't need to discuss it with him when he's a baby. And also when he was a baby, I would never directly correct people. I'd never be like, oh, he's a boy. I would just then continue the conversation, and as I was talking about him, I would use he, him pronouns for him. And then people would either clock on, or sometimes they don't. Sometimes they hear me using he, him pronouns, and then they continue to use she, her. Wild, wild. But Rowan did wear like a fairy multicolored style dress for Halloween. And another kid said when he saw him that he was wearing a girl's dress. And I just verbally said out loud so that everybody could hear, well, boys can wear dresses too, just like as if it was very normal and not a big deal. And Rowan honestly didn't seem to notice. I feel like we might have some of those conversations coming up in our future. So if anyone has any book recommendations, let me know, because I am raising a boy who tells me he's a boy, but loves pink and purple and is into dresses, but also is into fighting and monster trucks and trains. So like, what even is gender? Philosophy on gifts for Rowan. My philosophy is ask the parents first. Just especially around Christmas and birthdays, don't just buy him things without consulting us first in terms of what we need and want, and what Rowan wants too. Thank you very much. Talk to us. Does Rowan know what you do as a job? Has he seen your videos? So he knows that I film videos. I've shown him some like short form content that I've made that's age appropriate. Like I did a brand deal with this publishing company for a kids like science experiment, magical experiments book. And that was really fun. And I showed him that video that I made. And then also this morning, when we were getting ready for nursery, I knew I was going to be quite tight on time this morning, and so I set up all of my equipment beforehand. Rowan gets really interested and I tell him, oh, I'm filming for work, and he'll come and sit on the sofa. I'll put the headphones on him and I'll give him the microphone, and he can see himself in the viewfinder and he can talk in the microphone and like hear himself in the headphones, and he loves it. And this morning he was here and he was sat on the sofa and he was like, I'm going to nursery today. Oh God. So yeah, he knows, and he knows that we have jobs, and that's how we make money, and that's how we buy things that he wants. Okay, on to home/moving. Definitely had a lot of questions about this, especially since my London versus Manchester video that I made. So how are you feeling moving out of London? So as I briefly mentioned in that video, but Dan would say he very much predicted that this would be the case. Once Rowan was at nursery, I started to get all of the things that I have felt lacking. Essentially, local community. Obviously, it's only been a term, so it's still early days, but the potential is there. Like, it's buzzing. Like, I'm feeling excited. I'm meeting local parents. Rowan's making friends with all of his mates. We've had a play day after school, one of his friends' houses. We hosted a coffee morning here and had new nursery friends come over, and it was so fun. We went trick-or-treating with friends from nursery. And also I've been talking to other people who live in this area, from this area, and hearing them talk about the area that we are in and saying, oh, it's such a great community. There are so many families. It's really great. And hearing other people like talk about how great this area is for all of that stuff is making me love it more and see all of that stuff more. I think we were in this like tricky age period. You're no longer on maternity leave and you don't have a young baby anymore. So you're not able to like go to all of the classes and have the community with all of the new mums with babies, but you're not at school yet. And so you're in this like limbo period of like, where's my community? Where are my people? We're all just working, but all of our kids are going to different private childcare situations. So I know in that video I said that I constantly flip-flop between Manchester and London. I think when I filmed that video, I was very much in a I want to move to Manchester mindset. And now I'm very much in a I love it here and I want to stay in London mindset. After leaving the Manc-London debate aside, have you found new things to love in London? Yes, Rowan's school, his nursery, the green spaces that we have around here and the mini parks, just walking from one bit to another, you just like go past or go through like lots of mini green spaces. And I love that. And the weather, I mean, it's absolutely pissing it down today, but I can tell you for certain that London weather is better than Manchester weather. It's just drier and sunnier and warmer here. What room/outdoor upgrade/change in your house are you the most happy about? I mean, the balcony was the one that we did this year, so that feels the most recent, although obviously we're not using it as much now, but I really love the balcony. However, a new unexpected change has occurred. We rearranged the furniture in the living room very slightly when we hosted our last coffee morning, just to create more space for people to move around in, because we knew we were going to have a lot of people over. And then after everyone left, we were kind of like, should we keep it like this? So we're experimenting, we're testing it out, we're seeing how we like it. The only downside of it is that there is a less obvious space for the area when we're drying clothes, but we can make it work. And I am very happy about this change. It does make the room seem a lot bigger. Essentially, we used to have Rowan's little toy kitchen and his table up against this wall, and then our dining table was like in the middle of the room. So we've moved his kitchen, we've moved his little table, and we've put the table against the wall, but not flat against the wall, like at an angle against the wall. I think if we're going to stick with this layout, it would suit a round table better, but this works for now as we are in testing period. What it means is that there's just like this huge extra bit of space in the kitchen area, and this room looks huge now. How long do you see yourselves staying in your flat now that you've got it so nice? It is so nice, right? Yes, we have got it so nice and we do love this flat, but I feel like we don't have much more than 2 years left in us in this flat. Our fixed rate on our mortgage comes to an end September next year, but we will not be ready to move then. I don't think we want to move then. So we'll get a new fixed rate and maybe 1 more year, I don't know. One of the positive sides of if we decide to stay in this area is that we are not beholden to moving during the summer holidays, so Rowan can start at a new school in September because he'll just stay at the school that he's at and we can move any time of year. We've got some Christmas questions. Favorite Christmas film? Okay, I already mentioned it, but When Harry Met Sally, does that count as a Christmas film? You do see them getting a Christmas tree and it's set around the holiday season, some of it. And then also, I know all of the things that are problematic about that film, but I still love Actually. That film has a special place in my heart. I'm trying to think of like newer Christmas films, but it's not something I feel like I massively engage in. I remember watching Klaus, which is like the animated one with the letters, and really loving that, but I haven't seen it again. Are you looking forward to Christmas? Yes, and it's a new location for us. We're going to Dan's uncle's for Christmas. Never spent Christmas there. Never spent more than just like one family event with that part of his family, but now going to be spending like 2 whole days with them. I've heard that his uncle is a great cook and does a great Christmas dinner, so I'm happy. How do you feel about mince pies? No, don't like mince pies. I will eat the pastry around the mince pie. Do you encourage Rowan to believe in Santa? It depends what you mean by encourage. We have talked about Santa as if he is real. I do think it's easier just to go with it rather than not, especially because lots of kids around him are all believing in Santa. But Rowan doesn't particularly like Santa, so our approach to him is a bit more reserved, a bit more distanced. Last Christmas, I think, was the first time that he was old enough to really grasp and understand Santa and what he does. And so we explained to him before he went to bed on Christmas Eve, Santa's gonna come and he's gonna eat the mince pie, and we've got the carrot out for Rudolph, and there was some milk, and that he'll leave Rowan some presents. In our household, we do the stocking is Santa and presents under the tree from like people that you know. And we explained it all to him, and then he got so scared and so sad and got really freaked out by the idea of this random man coming into his grandparents' house whilst he was asleep. And you know what? Fair enough, fair enough. And so what we had to do is we had to remove the mince pie and the carrot and all of that. My parents have a fireplace, and we had to get a chair and put it in front of the fireplace to block the fireplace so that Santa couldn't get down. Like, we had to do a whole like, look, nope, Santa's not coming. He's not coming in the house. So last year, Santa did not visit, but the way that we did it, because we still filled up his stocking, my parents stayed home and babysat whilst Dan and I went to the pub, and we said that Santa came and met us at the pub and gave us the presents. So who knows what will happen this year. But he still, again, doesn't seem too keen on Santa this year. He's like, I don't like Santa. And I'm like, fair, fair. Okay, I've got a lot of work-related questions. I'm gonna answer some of them here, but actually I'm making another video for vlognukah that's a bit more reflective-y, work themed. So I'm gonna save some of them for that too. And actually, before we get into the work questions, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Squarespace. So whether you are just starting out in the freelance world or you're a small business owner, Squarespace makes it super easy to create your own beautiful website, engage your audience, and sell anything from physical and digital products to courses and even your time, all in one place and all on your terms. I've been using Squarespace for years for my own professional websites. They have tons of flexible website templates to choose from, and you just pick the one that feels right for you, the one that you're vibing with, and then you can customize it all with your own branding, colors, fonts, assets, pictures, content, all of that to create your own stunning and personalized website. You can add different features depending on what your needs are, and you can really make any template do whatever you want, and it is super simple to use. And Squarespace's new design intelligence empowers anyone to create their own beautiful and personalized website tailored to you using AI technology. If you are somebody who has an online store, then Squarespace Payments makes all of that super easy. Onboarding is really fast and simple, and there are lots of different options for how your customers can pay. If you're more of a service-based business, then Squarespace also has invoicing. You're able to manage clients and keep track of invoices, simplifying your workflow all in one place. So if you're in need of a website, you can go to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and then when you are ready to launch it into the world, you can go to squarespace.com/morehannah to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Okay, onto these work-related questions. How has your relationship with your fans changed as your audience has shifted? I love this kind of question. The first thing that comes to mind is that I have less men following me, so that there are less creepy comments, and I'm less worried about being constantly sexualized with anything that I post online. I also feel like not to encourage an unhealthy level of parasocial relationships. This might not just be a content shift, it also just might be the stage of life that I'm in, but also like the stage of like my creator life that I'm in, is that maybe like 7, 8, 9 years ago, the relationship felt very like YouTuber fan. And this was like in the peak of like what I was doing online, I would say. And also my audience were a lot younger then. And I think we've all mellowed out, and the relationship is less like YouTuber fan and more just kind of like people hanging out on the internet, like doing similar things, interested in similar things. Yes, like I still want to acknowledge the like parasocial nature of it, because I am the one with the platform and you're watching me and you know me, but I don't know you. But there are a lot more people in my audience who I do know. And sometimes I do meet people who watch my videos just in my day-to-day life. And I'm like, oh, you're cool. Like, I also want to be your friend. And again, I don't want to create like imbalanced or unrealistic expectations in terms of the, you know, viewer, audience, creator relationship. But I do feel like it's gone a bit like this, where the distance is, I don't know, what is the distance? Power, but I do still have more power in this relationship. Let's be real, let's call it what it is. I would love to hear your perspective on the change in relationship dynamic, if there has been any, especially if you have been a viewer for a long time. Have you been able to replenish your business savings? No, but I'm also not depleting them anymore. So good news. I saw a graph recently that was showing how new mums' income is impacted after having a baby. And this was specifically about mothers and employed mothers. But the shape of the graph, I was like, oh, that's my income as well as a freelance mum. And it essentially like starts up here, which is like salary before having a kid. And then 1 year post kid, it just plummets absolutely all the way down. And then in the subsequent years following having a kid, it like rises slightly, plateaus, but never gets up to here. But this was only, I think this graph was just showing like the first 5 years since having a kid. I don't know if it like continues to increase after that, or if you're in your plateau era, which I am in. This is it. My graph has done exactly that, just like whoomp, all the way down, come up slightly and like plateauing, but at a much lower level than where I was before. I don't know what happens like if you have another kid. Do you drop off a cliff again, or because that actually is the rockiest bit. Like going from none to one is more impactful on your income than 1 to 2. So maybe you just stay in the plateau. I don't know. We'll see, guys. But I'm not dipping into my business savings anymore to pay myself or to pay others. Of your little wins, which one is your fave? I think it's the one where I made things for Rowan's birthday. Me and Dan created that photo album of Rowan's first 3 years of life. And then I also did the Rowan tree sprig berries embroidery. Loved. What's something someone starting out as a freelancer should know? Take advantage of the pros. The pros, not as in the writing pros, but the pros, the pros and cons. So there are pros and cons of freelance life and there are pros and cons of employed life. When it comes to the cons of freelance life, you've got no choice. You just got to accept them. All of the security and benefits that come with an employed job, you don't have those. You don't get paid sick leave. You don't get paid holiday, none of those. Maternity leave, what's that? So the cons, you've got no choice. They are just part of the package. But many freelancers forget to take advantage of the pros. And so then they're just miserable because they're only dealing with the cons. But the pros are things like the flexibility in your schedule. So maybe you do work weekends a bit, if you can, because you're going off on holiday midweek, or you're going to the cinema on a Wednesday morning, or you're able to actually take doctor's appointments and dentist appointments, or you have flexibility to spend time with your kids. Everyone will have different priorities, obviously, when it comes to what they want to do with that flexibility, but my goodness, just take advantage of it. Don't forget to. If you had a normal job, what would it be? I would work for Patreon, the company, with creators, and actually they are expanding their London team. I just saw a job posting for a new role in London that is working directly with creators. I was umming and ahhing about applying for it, but it's not quite the role for me. I don't think I'm qualified for that role. That one doesn't quite lean into my strengths, and it's also not one that I would want to give up all of my freelancer flexibility for. But I know what the job title is and what they call it at Patreon of the role that I do want. So if that ever comes up in London, I'm applying. Hi Patreon, please hire me. But I think because of all of the pros that I enjoy from this job that I do, it would have to be a really good role and a really good deal for me to switch to being employed, you know? I wouldn't have been able to spend an entire week just making Wicked-based content to hustle my way in to the premiere if I had a full-time job. I wouldn't have been able to do that. How did your home stretch goals go? Great question. Okay, so I wanted to host the Home Stretch Goals workshop, did that. Dublin trip, at the time of filming this, I'm going this weekend, but I will have already been, done. I wanted to host at least one more coffee morning, done. When Harry Met Sally film night, did it just with one other friend, still counts. And she hadn't seen the film before, so that was even more fun for me. Vlognukah, doing/done. Those are the ones that are done. The others, Notion templates, we started and we were oh, this is a bigger job than we initially realized. And also the week that I was meant to really start working on the Notion templates was that week when I was hustling for the Wicked invite. And so yeah, that took priority. That's being bumped to next year. Karaoke party, not happened. But there's still time. 'Tis the season, I feel, as well, maybe. I wanted to make 2 more episodes of Little Wins, and I've done 1, and I have an idea for another. I just need to get my shit together and make it and do it. But Vlognukah is kind of taking over my life right now. And I wanted to read one of those gathering/hosting books. And I'm planning on doing that over the Christmas break. So I would say not bad. Okay, we've got some random miscellaneous questions. What's giving you hope at the moment? Honestly, Zach Polanski and the Green Party, it's giving hope. Thoughts on the 2025 F1 season. So it's not over yet at the time of me recording this. And so I really hope that Lando wins. It's close. He's currently ahead in my timeline, but I keep saying to Dan that the next season of Drive to Survive that covers this 2025 season, it's going to be a juicy season. I cannot wait. When did you learn to identify gut feelings? Great question. No fucking clue. I want to throw that back at any of you. When did you learn to identify gut feelings? I hadn't even thought about that as being something that you have to learn, but yeah, you kind of do have to learn it. My goodness. Is there food you used to eat but can't anymore and miss eating? There is one, and it is sweet corn, but it's specifically corn on the cob off a barbecue with butter spread all over it. I miss that. Do you have a best friend? So I have a Mindy Kaling approach to best friends, which is that it is not a person, it is a tier. And so I have lots of best friends. Advice. Some people are asking for advice. Apparently, I'm still happy to give it sometimes. At what stage do you think a couple should get a joint bank account? Is it needed pre-kids? So this is entirely up to you. You don't even need a joint bank account when you do have kids. I personally think it makes things a lot easier, but not everyone does it. I would say if you want to get a joint bank account, the time to do it is when you start having joint expenses. So that could be when you move in together, and so you're paying rent or a mortgage and bills and stuff together. But until you've got joint expenses, you don't really need a joint bank account. Tips on how to support a friend who's going through hard times with fertility treatment. Everyone will be different in what they need, but these are just things that I need. Text check-ins from friends. That always makes me just like feel seen and comforted and loved and cared for. Invite them to things. I want a life outside of trying to have another baby, and I want to enjoy the life that I have now in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I was really sick and pregnant or had a newborn baby. Speaking of which, organize to do fun things together. And importantly, be gentle in social situations where you know that there's going to be someone else who is pregnant there. Basically, try not to surprise them. I have turned up to social occasions where I've been invited by one friend and I don't know other people who are there, and then it suddenly sprung on me that one of those people are pregnant, and I kind of just shut down. I just like feel like shit for the rest of the evening, and I just wish that someone had kind of warned me ahead of time. It's not always possible, I know, but if you are somebody who knows that you're going to be with your friend who's going through fertility struggles and you're going to be in a situation where somebody else is there who is pregnant, you might want to just be like, hey, by the way, just so you know, before you get there, because a surprise pregnancy announcement, I don't need that. No, thank you. I need to be very gently told in a one-to-one setting. Okay, I had a bunch of questions kind of reflecting on 2025 and looking to 2026. That feels gross to say. 2026. What was the biggest lesson you learned this year? I think honestly that it's okay to still not have everything figured out. And there's going to be a whole other video kind of about that. What are you most proud of from this year? Having fun despite not being pregnant, like really prioritizing the joy in my life and staying present and recognizing my achievements, even if they don't feel quite the same scale as previous achievements. And also proud of myself for just continuing to experiment and learn. Highlight of the year, obviously the Wicked premiere, but again, recency bias. Camp Kindling with Dan and Rowan was so good. Also, disclosure, I didn't pay for those tickets, but it was still a great weekend. And Wimbledon, I love Wimbledon. That's always a highlight of my year if I get to go to Wimbledon. What are your plans for 2026? Honestly, I don't know, but I don't know in an exciting way. And also, next year is going to be our first year where we're having to deal with summer holidays. So any tips for that, much appreciated. But I think continuing to experiment and learn with my work-related stuff and building on what I've already created here. I have lots of ideas. All of these are so in the infancy ideas phase that do not expect any of this to happen. But podcast 2026, merging my Between the Sheets newsletter onto my Patreon so that that's a free newsletter still, but hosted on Patreon, merging the Creator Talks newsletter and doing more of the kind of like stuff in the creator economy and influencer industry, also merging all of that on to Patreon. These are the current things that I'm mulling over, but I have no answers to yet. Well, thank you for making it all the way through this really long Q&A. I hope that you're all doing well, and I'll see you tomorrow for another day and video of vlognukah. Bye bye.